Welcome to the Renderpod. Today we have a special guest. He's a Nigerian-British writer, director, and photographer. His feature films include Japanese murder mystery thriller Random 11 and sci-fi drama After the World Ended. His work has been released theatrically and streamed on Netflix, Amazon, Tubi, and IMDb TV. He's a creative consultant for Amazon, a mentor for the Sundance Institute's Collab program, and has been nominated for and has won multiple awards, known for character-driven stories that explore identity, displacement, and psychological vulnerability, and his independent films that blend eclectic international influences. We are so happy to have Tony Sebastian Ukpo.
Happy to be here. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for being here. So I wanted to start with what you're currently working on and what your most recent project was.
So as far as like most recent projects, I actually just released a short film that I shot a while back, called Boketo. It's sort of like a short drama exploring the idea of African identity through two different characters who are kind of at a crossroads in sort of like their personal relationship. Um, And outside of that, I did a feature film called Moments in the Quiet City, which I shot in Paris a while ago, which is kind of like a city symphony film, which is again exploring lots of social issues and just general sort of like life questions while observing people going about their day over the course of a single day in Paris. And well, currently I am in the process of packaging and financing my most recent feature film, which is a horror movie, a supernatural horror film, which is an adaptation of a TV series which I pitched a few years back and which was being pitched, shopped around, which we're now converting into a feature film. And I'm also in writers' rooms for a couple of TV shows while also doing development and writing for a video game. So I have a
Oh,
couple of
wow.
different things kind of going on at the moment, but trying to juggle it all as it were.
Yeah, that's great. Have you always been this diverse in the kind of creative projects you work on, or did it start with solely filmmaking or solely screenwriting?
Oh no, it's always I guess it always did start off quite diverse because I've always been interested in storytelling, really, in whichever form it takes. So I started off writing short stories and poetry. I did like comic books back in the day.
Mm.
I started off making short films too, and done some theater as well. I'm just interested in like lots of different possibilities for being able to sort of like tell different types of stories. And I think different mediums offer different things for particular stories, but films in particular for me is like a nice sort of like mix of all of the different elements which I appreciate. So photography, working with people, stories, world building, and all of those things kind of come together in sort of like a feature film environment for me. Um, I mean, I love TV series as well, and obviously the long form format has lots of possibilities as well as far as like developing characters and things over time. But I think like feature films or even short films, that concentrated period of time allows you to really hone in on saying something very specific in a very particular way, um, that allows you to kind of like have a whole experience.
So I'm curious about just how often you work on a project. How many projects have you done over your career? Yeah,
So I might be losing count here,
that's a
but
great problem.
I think I've done like 12 feature films over like since I guess like my first feature film was like in 2009 when I finished it or completed it properly, I believe. And then since then, right up till about COVID, I've been making a feature a year almost. And then lots of like either short films and music videos and other little things like in between as well.
Mhm.
Um, so I guess I've managed to sort of like get out quite a bit of work um over the last decade or so. but I like to have multiple things going just because I like to keep busy.
Hmm.
And especially in the filmmaking world where there's lots of time in between projects and development and waiting on grants and waiting on applications and all that sort of thing, especially in the independent world
Right.
where you're not necessarily, you don't have the luxury of like having lots of those things um, to your benefit. You don't have access to it as easily. And so it's a nice way to kind of just be free and just kind of like practice your craft and to try out different ideas and try out different stories without sort of like the complications of thinking like, oh, I've got this funder to pay back, or we need to attract this audience, or we need to, um, hit this deadline or whatever it is. So like all the projects kind of like have their own individual parameters that you kind of go by, and then you try and fit other things like around that. So you're not necessarily wasting time waiting on things or waiting on other people because of course it's collaborative. So like while someone else is out working on something for a project, like I don't know, like as an example, like a composer's working on music for something, right? I may have like a week or a couple of days, like, oh, let's go shoot another little short film, or maybe I'll write on something or develop some other idea. So and then obviously I'm doing like photography on the side as well. So that's also a very different practice. I'm drawing a lot, doing little comics and things like that. Um, and I think they all kind of come together to kind of keep me busy, keep me motivated, but mostly to also feed into all the other projects because I think like all those different artistic practices help to elevate the others
Each
around them.
other. Right, right, right.
Mhm.
Yeah. Would you say you're a workaholic? Because it sounds like a whole lot of work. You're like, oh, wait, if there's a downtime here, we like do another thing here. Yeah. Do you identify with that?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's like I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I feel uncomfortable when I'm not working, so I wouldn't necessarily call it like workaholic, but I'm definitely sort of like very appreciative of the possibility of having the time to work on creative projects. Um, and in a way, it's not because I feel like I have to do it, but it's a nice thing to do to kind of keep my sanity going as well.
Yeah.
Because you're working on other little jobs on the side, and like, sometimes it's like, oh, like I've got all these other sort of like maybe not as interesting things when you're doing like a corporate video here, or you're doing some consultation here, or you're working for other people. And it's nice to kind of do artistic things for yourself as well. And so I just kind of feel like it's a nice way to spend the time. Like, I mean, there's loads of people who will spend the time, like you might just be on social media scrolling or like watching stuff endlessly. I mean, there's lots of content these days,
Yeah.
lots of new TV shows, lots of films. I mean, there's like endless things you could be doing. And I feel like why not spend some of that time making things yourself to put out into the world as well, right? Um,
Mhm.
and even if it's not with the purpose of like, oh, I want to kind of make this big movie and like make lots of money, or like I want to put it out and everyone's gonna, like give it 10,000 likes on YouTube or wherever it is. It's more just to be able to do something and put it out there for yourself as part of that growth process as an artist. And you can say, okay, well, I've done that idea. I kind of saw how it came out. Now I know how to either integrate it better elsewhere or leave it as it is as its own standalone project, or just kind of use that as like a learning opportunity as well.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I can imagine you can kind of see your own progress over the years. You're like, oh, I remember how I was in the beginning, but now that I've worked on so many things and across many disciplines within like the media arts, you, well, I don't know. I'm hoping you hype up yourself too, and you're just like, wow, look at everything I've done.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like I noticed lots of friends of mine who I went to film school with, and there's still people who are like really surprised, like, oh my God, like how do you make so much work? Like how do you make all these feature films and stuff? Because I think it's very easy to get stuck. And I kind of made a conscious decision after graduating from film school, this was like many years ago now, that I wasn't going to waste time doing small things or small steps or spending lots of time on small projects when I could actually just go out and make stuff, right? Because there were loads of people who finish film school, you think, okay, like the usual progressions, like you go and you make a short, You go find some funding, you make the short, put out to a couple of festivals, hope it gets picked up by someone, maybe use that as a stepping stone to make a feature film, and that whole process, and just to make like one short and maybe a feature film can take like a couple of years, right? And I kind of thought, well, that kind of feels very unintuitive for me because like again, I kind of come from the independent world, and lots of the filmmakers and artists who I really admire kind of like work in that way, where it's like it's very self-sufficient in that they're just going out and making things. They're not waiting for anyone to give them permission. It's not about like, oh, we need X amount of budget to make a film. Especially now, I mean, with the whole all the advancements in technology is so democratized now, the process of making films and making art that there's really no excuse to just not just go out and make things if you have collaborators who are willing to go along with you on that ride, right? And so for me, I really think that it's important to just take that chance and take the risks, right? And try to like make things. Even if you fail, that's kind of part of the learning process. And sometimes the failures can be beautiful and
Yeah.
sometimes they're unexpected. And at least I can say I've tried, right? As opposed to just kind of like waiting around thinking like, oh, I kind of need like these particular things to be in place before I can do something. It's about making those things happen for yourself.
Right. That's awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of creatives get stuck in kind of analysis paralysis and,
Mhm.
just maybe even the stress of collaborating with people, which I'm curious how you found, your collaborators and, it's pretty blessed that you have found people who you do multiple projects with, not just one. How did you meet each other?
I mean, well, there's lots of different people. I mean, from cast and crew, it's like different situations. Some of them are friends I knew from film school or talent who I worked with on like student projects. And you kind of just you carry yourselves along the way, right? Like you follow each other on the journey. Some people I met through doing other projects or working on other people's films. And you develop a relationship and you develop sort of like an understanding as well. But what I appreciate the most in the people I tend to work with often is that they're all understanding of the kind of journey that we're on and like what we're doing. So it's not like it's not a transactional process, right? It's a mutually appreciative process of like, oh, we're interested in this idea or like this one thing that we're trying to make, and you're happy to go on that journey because they like the idea and because they want to express themselves as well as artists and be able to do things. So it's very much not about the financial aspects of things. I mean, because obviously it's like you're working independently, you're not always able to pay people, you're not always able to have all the things that you need. And some people don't get that. I mean, some people kind of get like,
Yeah.
they're like, oh yeah, I'm really interested in this project. I think it's great. Okay, you're not paying me, no problem. I'm happy to just go do it. But then they kind of look and think, oh, but why are you using this camera? Or like, oh, why are we not shooting this location? It kind of feels cheap. It feels this, it feels that, whatever it is, whatever excuse they kind of come up in their heads with, right? And then they go, well, actually, I don't want to be associated with that, right? Meanwhile, there are other people kind of go like, oh, you're shooting on an iPhone. That sounds amazing. Let's go. What can you do with it? It's all about the end result for them, right? Not about how you do it. And I think especially with technology now, there is this really big focus on like, oh, you've got to be using the new Sony camera if you want to have something that looks good. You have to be using this. You have to be, shooting with green screen. You have to be doing the effects. You have to be doing, and people don't think about the actual project anymore as its own sort of like entity, and being able to find people who are willing to kind of take those risks as well and to experiment. So I always try and find people to work with who understand that frame of mind and kind of understand what I'm trying to do and are just passionate about the process. As opposed to like, oh, I kind of want to, this needs to be a stepping stone on my career ladder or whatever it is, right? And because I don't look at it that way. Maybe I probably should a little bit more. Um, but I think there's a time and there's a way to approach those kinds of projects that eventually get you to the place where you're able to work on bigger budget things. I'm like, this current feature I'm doing now is going to be like a much bigger thing than I have done in the past. But it's on my own terms because I've been able to sort of get the experience over time and work with people who know what they're doing, collaborators who are interesting, passionate. So I have a very good idea about how to execute what I want
Hmm.
within within sort of like the framework of how I see cinema evolving and like how I see my cinema evolving as well. And it's something that should come organically. You can't really sculpt it or prepare it in any particular way. It just needs to be personal to you.
I wanted to talk about your style. So you say you have grown up all around the world, um,
Mhm.
and have lived in London, and now you're in France. I wanted to know, when did you start to feel like, oh, this is my style, and the directors that influenced you to come to that identity as a filmmaker?
Well, it's interesting. It's something I kind of tend to come to regularly because I'm often going through periods, and I sort of either have like a kind of like an art house period or like a more sort of genre period or a more dramatic period. And I think that's because I can sort of split my artistic, certainly my filmmaking personality into two different sides, which is the sort of like 80s imagination, sort of like fantasy, blockbuster, kind of more, I guess, mainstream cinema side of my personality, which is kind of like a big fan of like, Star Wars and anime and, you know, genre films, science fiction, action films, um, all these kinds of films, I guess, are well now would be seen as rather like, geek properties or that
Mhm.
I guess you could say, or like mainstream cinema. But on the other hand, I also really love and really appreciate a certain kind of art house cinema. So French New Wave or Japanese cinema, people like Hirokazu Koreeda, for instance, or Takeshi Kitano, um, or like like independent films by people like Jim Jarmusch or Richard Linklater, Agnes Varda, for instance, things like that. And I feel like my style has gotten to the point where it's more a mix of both of those things more than it's leaning towards one or the other. Which is to say that when I try and make a film, let's say like a genre film, like Random 11, let's say, for instance, my approach to it is not necessarily textbook formula serial killer thriller, but I'm kind of taking inspiration from lots of different places. So there are elements of kind of like art house representations of certain scenes, or like a sort of slower pacing, or a certain idea of like approaching structure. And I think that creates something that's rather unique because my instinct is to subvert audience expectations. So if you're kind of doing, I don't know, like a police drama, there's a certain way people expect things to go, and I always like to try and go the other way, right?
Mhm.
But it's still obviously leading towards an ending that kind of still makes sense story-wise. It's not just like for the sake of it, but like I like to try and like get there in my own way. And I think like my first feature, I made it very purposefully because it's a feature called Paris 60, and it was a very deliberate swan song to the French New Wave, who were like my biggest influence at the time. And I wanted to just make a film that was, this is my version of like a French New Wave film from the 60s, so that I could say that, okay, I've done this now. Now I'm going to move on to other things, right? And I think I've been approaching all my projects the same way since. So it's like I kind of look at in each individual project, and because I'm writing most of my own work, most of my own material, is very much a question of like, what am I trying to say with this particular project, or what attracts me to this particular story, and how would I interpret that myself in a way that makes it unique to me? And I think that generally starts with the writing more so than it is with the directing. But I consider myself a very visual writer, so I'm kind of writing and watching movie as I go along. So which is kind of why being a writer director is organic for me. And I do lots of my own editing as well. So I really kind of have a full picture in my head about what world and what characters I'm trying to create. And so I think it's kind of like a fusion style. It's not exactly mainstream and it's not exactly art house. And I think that makes it hard for a lot of people to place me because they kind of go in to certain films, let's say like Aliceville, for instance, which is also with the Renderyard. Um, and they're thinking like, oh, okay, this is just like a coming of age type story, or like maybe there might be some romantic interest or whatever it is kind of going on. But then it kind of goes slightly different way and the pacing is kind of very particular. Um, the character development is also very particular. The characters are very odd, I guess, for that type of film, that type of drama. Um, but that's kind of like I like that kind of discomfort it creates in the audience. Like I'm the type of person who likes to kind of hold a shot for like just that bit too long because I want people to really
Mm.
feel it. I want people to be kind of like get into the spirits of the film without even realizing that they're getting into the spirits of the film. But yeah, so I'd say like it's kind of like a fusion art house kind of genre style because I do gravitate a lot more to genre films and genre cinema, and I think like that's a very specific way to tell stories that allows you a lot of flexibility in terms of um, themes and messages and emotional to a material. And it also allows you to say a lot about society at large as well, in a way that does not feel like it's pandering or it's patronizing, and it's easily accessible that way. So if I really had to pick, like for instance, I could like make just science fiction films or just horror films, and I'll be very happy because there's still like a multitude of layers you can have within that genre, those genres. Um, that really suits my sensibilities well, I think.
Yeah, and clearly other people have felt like you portray these ideas well because you won a lot of awards. And I was curious, how do you feel when you win these awards? Do you feel this sense of you've made it, or does it just seem like, okay, that's their opinion, I'm grateful, but also, you know, I'm not really defining success by that?
Well, not really. I mean, because in a way, I've never defined myself by festival success or awards and things like that. I mean, they're nice when they happen. If anything, I'm almost more grateful for any selection at all in any kind of festival or any kind of like distribution scenario and things like that, because it just means that even a few people have seen your work and appreciated it enough to give it a chance. Um, and I feel like I don't think there's that many of my films that have been like necessarily nominated or awarded. I mean, I think there was like one in particular that kind of was kind of all over the place, but that also because we sent it to lots of different places. Um, but yeah, I don't even really think about any of those much at all. I'm very much of the opinion, especially for like short films, where it's like I'm more interested in just getting it out to the audience. So like I make a thing and I put it out and I move on to the next thing and make a thing, put it out to the audience, move on to the next thing. And for me, as long as people are connecting with the work, awards kind of don't really matter. And maybe it's also just me being a little bit sort of like jaded with the industry and how things work and knowing how things work and how it's not necessarily always about merit. But I think like it's just I guess it's like the cherry on top, right? Of like you've made the film, people appreciate it, and then oh, they appreciate it enough to feel like they need to give you something to acknowledge that. And that's obviously a really great feeling, but it's definitely sort of like not where I come from because I generally tend to work on the side of skepticism where it's like, no one's gonna give this any awards. No one's necessarily going to like appreciate this. Maybe it's gonna be for like a niche audience, and then be pleasantly surprised afterwards.
Hmm.
Because I think like that's definitely not a thing to work towards. Because if anything, it damages the work and it doesn't reflect your own real sensibilities and real aspirations. To kind of like tailor films for awards or festival selection and things like that. So it's very validating when those things happen, but you've done things your own way.